This biblical account is truly perplexing. Have you ever pondered why Jesus allowed 2,000 swine to perish in the sea, and how a single individual could house 6,000 evil spirits? It remains one of the most troubling episodes in the Scriptures. A man possessed by a horde of demons, dwelling among the tombs. 6,000 demons inhabiting one body. And then, without any warning, a massive herd of pigs plunges headlong off a cliff into the water. This one simple query has haunted believers for 2 millennia. Why? Why would a healer, the Savior, the Son of God, authorize such a destructive act? Why did the demons plead for the pigs instead of just vanishing into thin air? And this is a detail that might startle you. Why did the entire community, after witnessing a profound miracle, implore Jesus to depart? Most people read this narrative and are left completely bewildered. Yet, concealed within this furious, unsettling event are 3 crucial insights that will completely change your perspective. A truth concerning God's ultimate priority, a truth regarding spiritual combat, and a truth about your personal emancipation. Turn your attention to Mark chapter 5, because what you are about to uncover will be a total game changer. Our story commences not with the evil spirits, but with a deliberate choice. Jesus and his followers had just survived a violent gale on the Sea of Galilee, a storm so intense that even the experienced sailors were convinced they would perish. However, Jesus rose, rebuked the winds, and commanded the waves, "Quiet, be still." Mark 4 verse 39 reveals that the wind subsided and profound stillness descended. But here's the critical point. This was more than just a boat trip. This was a sacred assignment. Jesus intentionally crossed that water, defied that storm, and sailed directly into Gentile territory, the region of the Gerasenes. Foreign soil, land considered profoundly unclean for any devout Hebrew. Yet, concealed within this furious, unsettling event are 3 crucial insights that will completely change your perspective. A truth concerning God's ultimate priority, a truth regarding spiritual combat, and a truth about your personal emancipation. Why would the Messiah, the divine offspring, risk everything to enter hostile territory? Because on the opposite shore, there awaited a desperate soul, a person no one else possessed capacity to assist, an individual existing among the deceased. The moment Jesus disembarks, he is confronted by a terrifying figure. Mark 5 verse 2 and 3 state, "And as Jesus stepped out of the vessel, immediately he was met from the graves by a man possessed by an unclean spirit. He resided among the burial sites, and no one could restrain him any longer, not even with chain." Visualize this panorama. Frenzied eyes, tangled hair, a bare body marred with wounds, gore, and grime, fetters dangling from his wrists, shattered fragments from failed attempts to confine him. Mark 5 verse 4 continues, "For he had frequently been bound with shackles and chains, but he ripped the chains apart, and he smashed the shackles into pieces. No one possessed the power to subdue him. Superhuman might, uncontrollable aggression. He was so dreaded that the populace avoided the entire area. This man had become a fable of horror within his own community." Verse 5 relates the most distressing element. Day and night among the tombs and upon the hills, he was perpetually crying out and gashing himself with stones. Every evening his wails reverberated off the stone cliffs. Every day he wandered solitary, bleeding, weeping, self-destructing. He had forfeited everything. His dwelling, his lineage, his designation, his rationality. The tombs were not merely his habitation. They symbolized what he internally believed about his condition. Deceased, cursed, forgotten. But then Jesus arrived. Not by chance. He traversed a storm-tossed waterway with the explicit intention of locating the unique man no one else would approach. And when that individual discerned Jesus from a distance, something extraordinary occurred. Mark 5, verse 6 and 7. "And when he perceived Jesus afar off, he sprinted and prostrated himself before him. And shouting with a mighty voice, he declared, 'What business do you have with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you by God, do not torture me.' He worshipped, yet he bellowed. He fell at Jesus' feet, yet he pleaded to be abandoned. This is precisely what happens when illumination invades gloom. The area of the Gerasenes, also referred to as the Decapolis, constituted a coalition of 10 Greek settlements. Gentile strongholds established upon Roman influence and heathen rituals. And this region was notorious for a specific activity, swine husbandry. If you possess any knowledge of the Torah, you are aware that swine were strictly prohibited. Leviticus 11 verse 7 states, "And the pig, because it divides the hoof but does not chew the cud, is unclean for you." This was not merely a culinary preference. This was covenant mandate, a symbol of distinction. Yet, here in the Decapolis, a flourishing swine industry existed. Thousands of pigs, an entire financial system founded upon what the Almighty had designated as impure. When Jesus traversed that sea, he did not just cross the water. He breached a theological boundary. He stepped into a locale where God's ordinance was being overtly violated for profit. Now, before we proceed further, allow me to address an issue that perplexes many readers. Matthew 8 verse 28 asserts, "There were 2 demon-possessed men, not one." Mark and Luke concentrate on one. Why this discrepancy? This is not a contradiction. It is a matter of emphasis. Matthew, writing to a Hebrew audience, cites both men, which may align with the judicial principle in Deuteronomy 19 verse 15 that validated truth via the testimony of 2 witnesses. Mark and Luke, writing to Gentile audiences, prioritize the spokesman, the one whose metamorphosis is detailed in the narrative. Different gospel authors, distinct audiences, varied focus, identical occurrence, same power, same Jesus. Retain this context in mind. Jesus has entered a territory that benefits from disregarding God's law, where pigs constitute the economic cornerstone, and he is about to unmask an entire structure built upon disobedience. Mark 5 verse 8, for he was instructing him, "Emerge from the man, you defiled spirit." Jesus does not elevate his voice. He simply commands with dominion, but the spirits resist. So Jesus posed a query. Verse 9, "And Jesus inquired of him, 'What is your appellation?' He responded, 'My designation is Legion, for we are numerous.'" Why did Jesus ask? He is omniscient. He already knew. But this interrogation was not intended for Jesus. It was for the onlookers, for us, because what is about to be uncovered is the astonishing extent of this man's suffering. Legion. It is Latin Roman military terminology. A legion comprised 4,000 to 6,000 combatants, organized, strategic, ruthless. This man was not grappling with a single demon. He was inhabited by an entire cohort of darkness. Thousands of spirits engaging in conflict for governance inside one vulnerable soul. No wonder he shrieked day and night. No wonder chains could not contain him. This was not oppression. This was a full-scale invasion. And yet, despite their multitude, despite their collective might, all of them together trembled before Jesus. The evil spirits may have been numerous, but Jesus is incomparable. Even their representative acknowledged him, divine offspring of the highest authority, not a tutor, not a seer, divine offspring of the highest authority. Even demons possess accurate theology. James 2 verse 19 states, "Even the demons believe and shudder." Then arrives the earnest petition. Verse 10, "And he implored him urgently not to dispatch them outside the locale," outside the territory, not just out of the individual. They wished not to exit the district. Why? Verses 11 and 12. "Now a vast drove of swine was grazing there on the inclined terrain, and they entreated him, saying, 'Send us into pigs. Allow us to inhabit them.' They pleaded vehemently, desperately. These entities who had terrorized a person and governed a region were now whimpering like captives before a magistrate. Why swine? Because evil spirits prefer physical occupancy, even in creatures, even in impure pigs. Why? Because the alternative is significantly worse. Luke 8 verse 31 clarifies, "And they implored him not to instruct them to depart into the chasm." The chasm, a place of confinement for fallen angels, anticipating ultimate reckoning. The demons knew Jesus possessed the power to relegate them there immediately before their designated period, and they were petrified, so they begged for pigs. Superior to inhabit unclean beasts than confront the suffering of the chasm. Here is where it becomes profound. Verse 13, "So he granted them authorization." Why? Why would Jesus sanction 2,000 swine to be annihilated? 3 rationales. First, deliverance must be perceptible. For too long, this man's agony was unseen. People observed the indicators, but could not discern the origin. When those pigs hurtled down the steep slope and perished in the ocean, everyone witnessed a sheer scale of what this man had been enduring. Wickedness became indisputable. Second, this constituted punishment on a financial structure founded upon defiance. Those swine represented a prosperous enterprise in contravention of God's ordinance. When Jesus permitted their demise, he was proclaiming that no economic framework, regardless of its profitability, is more valuable than submission to the Almighty. Third, Jesus was demonstrating a crucial point. A solitary human soul possesses greater worth than 2,000 swine, superior value than an entire economy, exceeding importance than comfort, more significant than profit. The swine herders fled and informed everyone. The entire township emerged. And what did they encounter? Mark 5, verse 15. They approached Jesus and observed a man formerly possessed by demons, the one who had housed a legion, seated there, attired and in a sound mind, and they were filled with apprehension, clothed and mentally sound, sitting calmly alongside Jesus. This was the identical individual who had terrorized them for years. Now he was intact. One might anticipate celebration. One might expect them to kneel at Jesus' feet. But verse 17 conveys something sorrowful, and they commence pleading with Jesus to leave their district. They prioritize beasts over humanity, gain over presence, familiarity over deliverance. They witnessed the power of the Almighty and requested his departure because they dreaded what else he might alter. And friends, many still exhibit the same behavior today. The man who had been liberated beseeched Jesus to permit him to join him, but Jesus declined. Mark 5, verse 19. Go back to your kin and recount to them how much the Lord has accomplished for you and how he has bestowed mercy upon you. This is the sole instance in the Gospels where Jesus refused someone who desired to accompany him. Why? Because this man had a singular mission. Jesus was exiting Gentile territory, but the good news needed to remain. So Jesus commissioned him, narrate what I performed for you, and that is precisely what he executed. Verse 20, and he departed and started proclaiming in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And everyone marveled. This man traversed the 10 settlements of the Decapolis, a predominantly Gentile area, publicly declaring his transformation. And people expressed astonishment, not at his theological understanding, not at his instruction, but at what Jesus had achieved. He did not possess a seminary credential. He understood only one fact. I was bound and now I am unshackled. I was afflicted and now I experience serenity. And that was sufficient. Permit me to offer 5 essential lessons you should recall. Number 1, evil spirits are tangible. They are not fables or metaphors. They are genuine spiritual entities with actual objectives and genuine fear of Jesus. Ephesians 6 verse 12 says, we contend against spiritual forces of wickedness. We are engaged in a spiritual conflict. But the evil spirits in this account did not mock. They implored, because when Jesus stands before them, they have no alternative but to comply. Number 2, Jesus braves tempests to save you. Jesus intentionally traversed a perilous waterway for one afflicted individual. No assembly welcomed him. No one extended an invitation, but he arrived nonetheless because he abandons the 99 to rescue the solitary one. No soul is excessively lost. No circumstance is excessively grim. If he crossed the sea for that man, he'll approach you, too. Number 3, deliverance is often disruptive. Jesus brought liberation to one person, but it incurred a cost of 2,000 swine for the community. Freedom is magnificent, but not always neat. It might demand your companions, finances, reputation, routine. Sometimes when Jesus intervenes, he overturns your entire structure. Are you ready to permit him to remove what you've been clutching onto? Number 4, do not dismiss Jesus. The most sorrowful element of this narrative is not the man suffering. It is the town's reaction. They beheld might, witnessed compassion, and entreated Jesus to depart. Why? Because they feared what else he might modify. They preferred livestock over humanity. profit over his presence. Many still exhibit the same conduct, but the expense of retaining your internal struggles is always greater than the cost of forfeiting your assets. Number 5, your personal account is significant. The man Jesus freed did not attend divinity school. He was not trained in defense of faith, but he possessed a narrative, and Jesus commanded, "Go relate it to them." That was adequate. You might believe you are unqualified, but what qualifies you is what he accomplished within you. Recount to them what he has performed. When people perceive who you were and who you are presently, they will be awestruck. Allow me to pose a straightforward query. Are there aspects in your existence where you've allowed despair to reside? Perhaps like the inhabitant in the burial sites, you've accepted the falsehood that this is simply your current identity. But there is no evil spirit excessively potent, no depth excessively profound, no history excessively dark that Jesus cannot restore. The identical Jesus who silenced the multitude is present here now for you. John 8 verse 36 proclaims, "If the Son sets you free, you will be genuinely free." You do not require a faultless supplication. Just invoke his name. Romans 10 verse 13 asserts, "For everyone who invokes the name of the Lord shall be rescued right now." Open your inner being. Permit him to sever your constraints. You were made for freedom. If you believe Jesus has all authority over the forces of darkness, type this in the comments. Jesus has all authority. Then pray this out loud. Jesus, I believe you are the Son of God. I surrender my life to you. Set me free and use me for your glory. If you prayed for that, welcome home. If you enjoyed this video, support this new channel by doing 3 things. Like this video, subscribe, and share with your friends and family, especially someone who's fighting their own battle right now. Because the demons knew exactly who stood before them. Jesus, Son of the Most High, Commander of Heaven. And he's not done. He's still crossing seas, still silencing legions, still restoring the broken. All you have to do is let him in.